I started painting in prison, and probably 3 months out of prison, I opened my first gallery, which was absurd, but that's when I started. And that has been now about 23 years ago. So everything that I do is surrounded around art. Um, so everything is for the sake of the art, and that includes framing and selling, and whatever. It's all about the art. So there are no other spin-offs from the art. You know what I'm saying? It's just that I try to eliminate the middleman in every regards of what I'm doing. So, for example, like you mentioned, the framing. I do my own framing. We do our own printing, and we do our own selling. So I'm not in the framing business. I started framing my art from the very beginning. What I learned right away was that creating a nice piece of art was just half the battle. The other part is packaging it, presenting it. And that's where framing came in. And as an artist, the most difficult thing for most of us was framing because it's so expensive. So initially I started going around to garage sales and antique shops looking for old frames, and I would try to refurbish them as much as I could. And that eventually evolved into me going to the lumber yard and routing out wood and making my own custom frames, until eventually I learned the business of the frame industry. And so I just started doing it for myself. And I've been doing it ever since. Yeah. There are no big moments. There are a million little moments. And you're only as, well, I shouldn't say that. It depends on what kind of artist you are. But the type of artist I am, I'm only as good as my last sale. Because I have to have a steady flow of income to sustain myself. So for me, it's just a constant hustle, a constant grind. What I tell young artists all the time is that it's never crowded on the extra mile. You got to do the extra effort, you got to do the extra work that other people are not willing to do. And that's what's going to distinguish you from everybody else. My children. So I, at the end of 10 years in Chicago with galleries in some of the more expensive communities, I realized how much money that I had spent in rent to other places. And so I actually was tired of the gallery, and I was going to work from home. So I was actually looking for a house in Chicago that I could live in and work in. And then I came to visit my sons who lived in Peoria, and then I had the aha moment then. I was like, wait a minute, if I'm gonna work from home and I travel all over the country, it doesn't really matter where I live. So I decided that I would move back to Peoria to be closer to them. I'll do the dirty work. I'll be the janitor. I'll clean the windows. I'll do whatever it takes to get the job done. And so I throw my ego and my pride out the window, and I just get in and grind. I think you have to wear both hats, but I wouldn't say that I'm the greatest businessman in the world. No, I wouldn't say I'm the greatest businessman in the world. If I was, I would have made millions of dollars, and I haven't. What I have done, I have made a career for myself. And I wouldn't say I made a business for myself. It's a difference. But I have made a career as an artist for myself. And it is a big difference. You know, business, you know, you hire a bunch of people and you know, you can scale and all that good stuff. But I haven't done that, and I have never figured out how I can do it with art. Because from what I've seen over the years, the things that make businesses successful is the exact opposite with art. You know, when you create a business, what you want to do is you want to create a thing, and then you want to scale that thing, and then you want to give it out to the multitudes. With art, the more exclusive you are, the more valuable your art becomes. And so you got to find that medium, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, so I wouldn't say I'm a great businessman. I would just say I've been fortunate to be able to create art for the majority of my life. Yeah, every project that I work on has challenges. And every project you work on, you have to figure your way through those challenges. And the more you do it, the more adept you become at it. But that's with anything, you know what I'm saying? So from trying to, I did a project with a sorority. And, we had to figure out how to get the product to this organization as efficiently and as effectively as we possibly could. And they were in New York, not New York, but DC. So all of those things, even with, when I go do shows in different parts of the country, most of my clients are not from where I'm selling my art. They're from all over the country because there's a lot of conferences that I go to. So we have to come back and we have to package each piece up individually and send it to respective clients. And all of that is, a challenge, and so we're confronted with challenges every day, different challenges that we have to figure our way through. No, I've chosen an off the beaten track path as an artist, and the good and the bad thing is that my clients are all over the country. It's good because not everyone all over the country is going to be hit by an economic downfall at the same time. So while one region of the country may be suffering, another one isn't, and I can pull my resources from that part of the country. But then the bad part of it is that, all of my clients are so far away. So it's good and bad, but I would rather it be this way than any other, because at least, during this very difficult time, we still have clients that's placing orders. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say it's an ideal place, but I don't think any place is necessarily ideal when you travel all over the country. I think Peoria is good because of some of its weaknesses in general. And one of those things is that the economy is not that great here. And so consequently, the cost of living is very low, but that makes it good for an artist, because your cost of living isn't bad, and then you can still go to New York or LA, Dallas or wherever to sell your art. But I wouldn't say that's a good thing about a place, is that the economy is not that great. You know what I'm saying? And it's getting more and more tenuous as the years go by. So, who knows? Hopefully, with the interest that people have in art in this community, maybe we can create an art mecca in Peoria where people may want to come and travel to at some point. I mean, the only example that I'm familiar with that I can use is like New Mexico. People travel from all over to come to Mexico, Santa Fe, for the art. And Peoria is centrally located to where it would make that an easier destination for Midwesterners to make this plight than this journey than going to New Mexico. But I mean, that's a long way off, and a lot of things would have to take place. But I do see that being a possibility, because it is a lot of interest in art here. You got a strong community that loves the arts. I don't know if we have a strong community that purchases art, and that's a difference. You know what I'm saying? But one of the things that I've learned with having galleries over the years is that no matter where you are, you're going to only be able to sell to so many people so many times. You know, you're not going to have a person that art gallery is not a grocery store where people have to keep coming back, you know what I'm saying, over and over and over again. So in order for an art gallery or an art community or even an artist to be successful in that endeavor, you have to think in terms of broadening your market. And you can't rely on the local economy, especially an economy like Peoria's where it's not that strong. You know what I mean? You have some people here that are very wealthy, but they can't buy art from everybody. And they can't buy art over and over and over and over again from everybody. So we have to expand our base and not look at Peoria's economy, but look at the Midwest. And we have to create things that's substantial enough to where people, when they make a trip here, it will be worth their while. And so that's the vision I can see for Peoria. And then on the other side of that thought, then I would say Peoria would be a great place for an artist. I would refer back to what I just said. I would not rely on the local economy. If I'm trying to start an art career, I would look at ways of taking my product and putting it in areas, showing it in areas as far away and as near as I possibly can to create a base that I can draw from on a regular basis. You know what I'm saying? So I think if you start a business here with an art gallery or something like that, I think in the very beginning years you may see, you know, some success, but eventually it's going to fade out because people are not going to keep coming back and over and over and over again, not for years. It's just not sustainable. And that's not just here. That's like most places, you know what I'm saying? Until, of course, you reach a level where your art is selling for so much money, or the artwork that you're selling is selling for so much money that you don't need but a few clients. You know what I'm saying? But how many of those galleries exist? You know, and then what ultimately happens with a gallery, and it's not just here, it's not just Peoria, it's even Chicago. You know what I'm saying? Your gallery turns into a museum and you get people coming in and looking, and that's it. And that's not that's not really a winning formula. You know what I'm saying? So I would say for a young artist or beginning artist or gallerist, I would say, you know, from what I've seen, the most successful people in this industry, aside from those that are in another atmosphere, you know, you got that esoteric group of artists that they mess up the bell curve. They don't count. You got to throw them out. Your Kehinde Wileys and, you know, your I can't think of the other ones, but I mean, there's a ton of them out there. Not a ton of them, but there's a handful of them out there, and their works are selling for 100,000, 150,000, 200,000. But as a realistic goal, that's not something you can make happen. But to be a successful artist, I think anybody can make that happen. And to be a successful artist, I think you just have to get ready to work hard, travel far, and keep doing that. And you know, one of the things that I told myself when I first started was that if I stuck with it, no matter how difficult, at some point it's going to get easier because more people will know about me, and it'll be a lot easier for me to get my work in front of people. And now, you know, 20 odd years later, I see that manifesting. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, there was no shortcuts. I couldn't circumvent those 10 years that were extremely difficult. I had to stick with it. And, you know, I found my way. And then, you know, Another thing I would recommend to artists or gallerists, whoever, is to experiment. Try different things, because what worked for me may not work for them. And what will work for them may not work for me. So, everything that I say, I put an asterisk by it and saying that's just my opinion because I don't know it all. You know what I'm saying? I can just speak from my experience. Most of my sales are shows and clients that I've already had. I don't work with through galleries. No, I just get out. And it's not just art shows, it's anything, you know what I'm saying? If I meet somebody that I think is interested in art, I'm gonna try to sell them some art. And those meetings can turn into some very successful endeavors. So, that's just the kind of entrepreneurial spirit you gotta have. You gotta look for opportunities everywhere you go. And you can never turn that hat off. You can never take that hat off. You got to constantly be looking for opportunities to and then leverage things too. You know what I'm saying? Like I think one of the most clever things that I did was I had a buddy of mine who was a State Farm agent, and he belonged to this Black State Farm agent group. And they met every year in a different part of the country. It was like a support group for Black State Farm agents. And he asked me what I would charge him to do a commission piece for that organization when they came to New York, because that's where he lived. And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I can't charge them a lot of money because it's an organization, just a professional organization. They don't have that kind of budget. You know what I'm saying? And then who would get the piece? They don't have a facility. Where would it go? So you got to think through all of those things. But what I did know was this, that organization was comprised of about 500 to 600 Black State Farm agents, which meant there was 500 to 600 entrepreneurs, 500 to 600 people who make $100,000 or more. That's an organization that I want to be a part of. And so instead of charging him to do that piece, I told him I'll do the piece for free, and then I just let me sell reproductions of it to the organization. So now 12, 13 years later, I've been doing that every year with them. And every year we probably do $20,000 or $30,000 in sales. So you have to think outside the box, and it can't always be give me, give me, give me. It's got to be some give, give, give. You know what I'm saying? Because that's one way that you're going to be able to easily get into certain doors. If you put some ridiculous price tag on things, you may not get into the doors you want initially, especially in the beginning, because people are not getting ready to pay you what you think you're worth. And truth be told, you're not worth it. You know what I'm saying? You don't determine your worth. That's a misconception that a lot of artists have. The free market determines your worth. So no matter how good or bad you think you are as an artist, it doesn't really matter until you get some sales under your belt. And then once you start getting consistent sales under your belt, then you can gauge at what your art is really worth. But until then, because you can put whatever you want on your art. You can put $1 million on your art. Does that mean you're going to get it? No. But it doesn't mean you're not going to get it. You know what I'm saying? It depends. Like, this is a perfect example. I tell people, you have to build a market. What is a market? This is what a market is. If JJ from Good Times, you guys know who JJ is from Good Times? You too young, huh? Well, it's an old sitcom in the 70s about a family that lived in the projects. JJ was an artist. His mother's name was Thelma, and his dad's name was James. If James and Thelma, who lived in the projects in Chicago, invited all of their family and friends over to support their son and asked them to buy some art from him, how much could he have sold his work to his friends and family for? Not much. But imagine Bill Gates' child was an artist, and his dad invited his family and friends over to help his son. How much could his son or daughter make on his art? That's your market. You know what I'm saying? It's not, the artwork doesn't determine the value. It's your market. That's why you can look at some art and say to yourself, oh, I can do that. It doesn't matter though. You don't have the market that that artist or whoever represented that artist created for them. And that's what makes a Basquiat worth $100 million, is the market that it's in. You know what I'm saying? And the market that it started in. And it took off in that market. And if you don't have that market, then what you have to do is price your art according to the market that you're in so that you can get some sales under your belt. And with that money, you keep producing and you keep expanding that market. And the more people you have in that market and the more affluent those people become, the more valuable your work becomes. So it's not driven by the work, because I've seen a lot of art that I think is garbage make a ton of money, way more money than I'll ever make in my life. You know what I'm saying? So that's definitely an important point for young artists to understand. Right, so when I stumbled onto this building, I had already been trying to do something with young people with the other facility that I have, but it turned out to be smaller than I thought it was, even though it was a big building, but it just wasn't big enough for me to do everything that I needed to do and have space for other people to come in and explore their creativity. So I've always, in the back of my mind, wanted to do something to give back in terms of my talent and my creativity, along with my wife, because she's equally talented in her genre, and she's also always had that compulsion as well. So when we stumbled across Greeley, we thought that this would be a perfect fit, and we negotiated with the school district and ultimately was able to get the building. And so now what we're doing is turning this into a community arts center where we'll provide creative classes for young people to give them an opportunity to be here instead of in the streets. So that's in essence the basic of what we're doing here. I think it would be no crime. Everybody would have a livable wage. There would be no hatred. There would be no violence. There would be cotton candy on every corner and watermelon balloons and orange flowers and, you know, I mean, I don't know. That's tough. I don't differentiate between a Monday or a Friday. You know, I don't punch a clock, and so, I mean, and every day there's work to be done. So I find myself, me and my family, we find ourselves having to steal time just for quiet, for space, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, our objectives and goals are bigger than we can do in our lifetime. And so every day is a million things on the table, and we just pick and choose from which one of those things on the table we want to tackle today. My favorite thing to do is to be here and to create and to work on this building and to try to find a way to make this thing work. So this is my happy place. You know what I'm saying? The goal that's in front of us is our happy place. And I would say that's the same with my wife, because we don't feel like we're working, even though we work a lot, but it doesn't feel like work when you love what you do. So this is our happy space. I think we've been fortunate enough to find ourselves in a position to where the harder we work, the more we enjoy life. And few people can say that. I would like to see economic equality with everybody in this, not just Peoria, but all across the country. I think that from a social perspective, you know, African Americans are lagging so far behind, and they've been lagging so far behind from the beginning of our existence in this country that I would like to see that bridge closed more. And you know, part of what we're doing is one way to help that, and you know, we're trying to do our part, but there's so many other people that have to be on the same page as that, you know what I mean? And I think it's a fool's errand to believe that people who are disenfranchised because they want to be. I think that people need to understand that there are certain things that took place for disenfranchised people to be where they are. And we need to look at those things and educate ourselves on those things and understand that it took this amount of effort to make this. And for us to think that it will take anything less than the same effort is foolishness. I mean, it's going to require a significant amount of sacrifice from everybody to correct atrocity that was just beat on the heads of a group of people. You know what I'm saying? And it's just going to take a lot of effort. And I think people just need to start understanding that and educating themselves on that. Because when people look at a lot of African American communities, what they see is the blight. But they don't see the connection of history in that blight. You know, they act as though this is somehow where black folks ended up. You know what I'm saying? As bad as any African American community is anywhere in this country, it used to be worse for black folks. So black folks having gone from being in a great position to a worse position, you know what I'm saying? This is how far we have progressed from where we started. And where we started was in chains. You know what I'm saying? And people got to understand that, and they got to look at that in context. Because if they don't look at it in context, I mean, you know, they're not getting the accurate picture. And it's easy to look at somebody that's out doing horrible things and say to yourself, "Oh man, that's a bad person. He should have done this or he should have done that," and not looking at the 450 years of pressure that's been on him and people like him. I think that this location has helped anything as far as what we're doing. I think we're here to help this location, if that makes sense. And I also think that no matter what Nikki and I are capable of accomplishing in our life, we'll be no more than that person on the beach picking up a starfish, throwing it back in the water. You know what I'm saying? Because the problem is so much bigger than what we can tackle ourselves. But, you know, for that one starfish, we're everything. And that's how I look at it. You know what I'm saying? If we can manage in the course of our life to just nudge somebody into a direction that's going to make a difference in their life, or if we can say something that may inspire somebody else to do something that may have a million times more of an impact than us, then I mean we've done what we've come to do. You know what I'm saying? I want, you know, people to understand that anybody can make a difference. You know what I'm saying? And you just have to have that mindset that you want to make a difference, and you got to find it and you find your lane to where you can do something that's going to leave this rock a little bit better by your presence than if you weren't here. So that's it.